Hi everyone, Happy New Year. So, one of my New Year's resolutions for 2021 is to live as authentically as possible. So, I'm going to share some more of my coming out story in this part 6 here. And so, I'm going to take a deeper look at my childhood to really take a bigger look at some of the instances from my childhood that really resulted in a lot of internalized homophobia that I still reflect on today. And just a little disclaimer that the people that I'm talking about in this video who made certain comments, that I'm not trying to put anyone down. I love my family members, and I don't really think that anyone in this video necessarily had bad intent. But I just think it's important to talk about these things because talking about them can be a form of healing, almost a form of therapy to really open up, to get what was bottled inside you out into the world. And also, if any of you are watching, and you can relate to what I'm saying, then you won't feel so alone, which is what I was looking for when I was looking at other coming out videos. And so I have a bunch of instances from my childhood that I'm going to go through, and they're grouped together kind of in certain categories. So first I want to look at instances where the word fag was used loosely. So probably my first memory of the word would be around 4th grade. So my parents got divorced when I was in the 3rd grade, towards the end of 3rd grade. And I had this light blue bag that I would bring back and forth between houses to carry my stuff back and forth. And my dad called it a fag bag. And I guess he called it that because the bag was like a little bit feminine, was like a light blue color, almost looked like a purse in a way. And so at the time it didn't offend me because I didn't know what a fag was. But looking back, I can see how that kind of unconsciously resulted in some internalized homophobia. And I also remember sophomore year, a guy at my lunch table, he would greet us with "What's up, fags?" And I didn't know he was just kind of joking around, but at the same time, just using the word loosely like that, I did not like that, especially because I was aware of the fact that I wasn't straight at the time, and I knew what a fag was. And another use of that word that I didn't like, so I work at a retail store, and so I think around summer 2019, I was working there, and one of my coworkers, he's 2 grades ahead of me, and he went to my same high school, so we knew some of the same teachers. And he was talking about a teacher who he thought acted a little bit inappropriately around the students, and it was a male teacher, and he referred to him as a fag. And I think he was kind of and I actually confronted him about it. I was like, I'm sorry, what did you say? And he said, oh, I didn't mean it like that. I don't mean that word offensively towards gay people. And so, but I think when he said it, he was kind of making the unconscious association between, to put it bluntly, homosexuals and pedophiles. And so I think he was kind of being indirectly homophobic, even though he didn't really mean to be. And so these instances show how the language we use can really hurt people, even if our intent isn't necessarily to harm someone. I remember hearing the phrase that sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I was taught that phrase, and it does have some validity in that it essentially boils down to that we shouldn't worry about what other people think, which is a good message, but at the same time, it underestimates the power of language. Language is a really powerful thing, and I think just as a society in general, we need to be more mindful of how we use our language. I'll admit that I'm not a perfect person, and I've probably used language in the past that I didn't mean to be offensive, but offended someone. And so as a society, I think we can just do an overall better job with that. And next I want to talk about some instances where people tried to imply that I wasn't like masculine enough, which I think led to some internalized homophobia. So for example, I like to sit with my legs cross-legged sometimes. It's just comfortable. But when I sat that way, my dad would say that I sat like a girl. And so I think he was almost trying to like undermine me, which caused some internalized homophobia. And like also, so a few months ago, he was teaching me how to put gas in a car for the first time, and I wasn't twisting the cap tightly enough. And he said, "Don't be a girl," and that I wasn't being strong enough. And so he was trying to kind of like threaten my masculinity, I guess. And I remember also someone who was kind of my female friend in high school saying that I was just one of the girls, since I would tend to hang out with the girls. And so I think these instances kind of resulted in internalized homophobia, that they didn't really make me feel masculine enough. But I think society is really starting to do a better job of kind of doing away with the whole masculine-feminine divide. In fact, we learned in psychology class how having a balance of both masculine and feminine energy is actually best for you. And so next I want to talk about just some kind of generally homophobic instances that I remember. So I remember my dad saying once, maybe around like when I was in 8th grade or so, he said, "If you have a gay wedding, do I have to come?" And I think he was just kind of joking, and I wasn't quite aware of my sexuality at the time when he said this, but looking back on it, I can see how it was kind of offensive. And he would also tend to say, "Homo say what?" which is that like classic joke where you try to get someone to say what so that you can joke that they're homosexual. And so that's just like a dumb joke that I don't like. And my dad would also say like, "Don't be gay," just like randomly. Like if I would do something that came off as somewhat feminine, he would go, "Don't be gay," which I didn't like. And another incident I remember, so in this biomedical science class that I took freshman year of high school, we were learning about pedigrees, which is just this diagram for genetics. And my teacher taught us how if two squares are connected by a vertical line, that suggests a father-son relationship, but a horizontal line would indicate a marriage between two guys. These kids like whisper to each other like, "That's wrong," in my class. And so that was just kind of a homophobic incident, not directed at me, but just something I didn't really like to hear. And to reiterate, I don't think any of these homophobic instances were really made with bad intent, but it just shows that the people who said these things weren't really thinking before they spoke. And I also remember a couple instances from my childhood where sexuality or homosexuality wasn't necessarily portrayed in a negative light, but it was just portrayed as like a bigger deal than it had to be. So I remember when I was in 6th grade, my dad was dating this girl, different girl now, so not my stepmom, but a different girl. And she's got a daughter who is 3 grades ahead of me. And so she was in 9th grade at the time when I was in 6th grade. And the daughter asked me what % gay I was. So I must have been like 11 years old. And I didn't really know how to answer the question. I was like 0.01%. Because, I thought I was straight at the time, since I was only 11. Some people I know who do end up being gay know that they're gay from a young age. Some people it takes a little bit longer to figure it out. And so at such a young age, like, it's really not okay to be asked that. And we really do not need to identify our sexuality at such a young age. And I also remember, so when I had my 9th grade open house, so that was when my mom would go through the school and meet all my teachers, then come home. And I remember she came home, and one of the first things she said was that, "I think your science teacher is gay." And in fact, my science teacher was in fact a homosexual in 9th grade. But that was like the first thing that she said. And I don't know why she didn't like talk about other things about the teachers, like what they would actually be teaching me. And so she just focused on the teacher's sexual orientation a little too quickly, and she emphasized it more than she had to. And so looking at these instances collectively, everything that I talked about so far in this video collectively, I think these incidents made me scared that if I were to come out to people in the future, especially straight guys, that they wouldn't want to be friends with me, or that if they were to be friends with me, that all they would be able to focus on is my sexuality and not the other aspects of my identity that I think are more important, like my musicianship or my science nerdiness. But I'm really happy that my fears were proven to be irrational. I've mentioned him before, one of my closest high school friends, Chris, he's been one of my biggest supporters. And also in college, 2 guys that he came out to on National Coming Out Day, my friends Marcus and Jacob. They're both really nice guys, and they said that our friendships would not change. In fact, I got to tour the science museum with Marcus. We got to nerd out together since he's really into physics and I'm really into biology, and it wasn't awkward at all. And I'm just really thankful for my friendships with those guys, as well as the other people that I've met at college. And so I think being open about myself has only strengthened my friendships, because it creates a greater sense of trust and authenticity. And so I feel like I can tell my friends pretty much anything. And speaking of strengthening relationships, I feel like my relationship with my mom is strengthened, since her and I can finally talk about LGBTQ plus issues pretty openly. Since in the past I would just avoid the topic, but now that she knows about my quote, I'm a lot more willing to talk about LGBTQ plus issues with her. And it's really nice to educate her about them too, because she didn't even know what LGBTQ plus meant before. Like, she had seen it in the news and stuff, but she didn't know what the acronym stood for. And so it's really great to be able to educate her about the diversity of the community, especially after learning about sexuality and gender topics in my sociology, body, and health class. And in fact, her boss is gay, so she's got that connection to the LGBTQ plus community as well. Although she is not perfect, and she admits that, she did say a couple of things that got to me a little bit. So after we had a nice conversation about my yearbook quote, we were watching Jeopardy, and there was a contestant where you really couldn't tell what their gender was, if they were male, female, or non-binary. And she said she kind of blurted out, that person has gender issues. And I was like, we just had a mature conversation about LGBTQ+, and like that's what you have to say? And so the way I see sexuality and gender is that if someone is comfortable in their own skin and not harming anyone, then that's really all that matters. Calling it an issue implies that there's a problem that needs to be fixed. But if someone's confident with who they are and a respectful human being, then that really should be all that matters. And I think my mom just spoke a little bit too quickly. And another thing she said that got to me a little bit was, so her boyfriend and I were talking about my quote, and her boyfriend knows about my quote, and he's totally cool with it. He's a nice guy. But my mom kind of blurted out, she said, Tanner likes girls too. And that's not necessarily true. And she thought she could say that because I didn't officially label myself as gay, since I just continued to say that I was not straight. And so it kind of shows that she still is clinging on to this little hope that I'm going to eventually get a girlfriend and be in a heterosexual marriage. And I just don't want to disappoint her. And so realistically speaking, I'm most likely not going to be in a heterosexual marriage someday. And right now, I loosely call myself gay, but I do prefer saying non-straight. And so labels are tricky, because labels make things easier. I mean, it would be easier if everyone identified as straight, gay, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual. But at the same time, sexuality in reality exists on a spectrum. And so labels can be confining and put people into boxes. So labels may be easier, but they can also be restrictive. And even though my mom may not have chosen her words the most carefully, at the end of the day, she says that she loves me no matter what, just like Caleb Scott's mom said when he came out to her. And I really can't ask for much more than that. And I'm very thankful that I'm in that position. And my advice for the end of this video is that anyone watching this should be in control of your own destiny. Only you truly know who you are, and you shouldn't let someone else identify you. People can try to, inevitably there's going to be people who say that sexuality, that deviance from heterosexuality is a phase or unnatural or something like that. But remember that you are a completely valid human, and I respect you, and you can always reach out to me too if you need to. So thank you so much for watching this part 6, and please have a safe, healthy, and happy 2021.